First contact and deception. The vast darkness of space flickered with energy as the Tsundere warship Dominator dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Supreme Commander Zexpal stood on the command deck, his four eyes narrowing as they focused on the small blue planet displayed on the main view screen. "Such a primitive world," he said, mandibles clicking with disdain. "Perfect for our needs." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Nextul, approached with a data tablet. "The scans confirm our initial assessment, Supreme Commander. The planet has abundant resources, particularly in rare minerals and biological diversity. The dominant species appears to have achieved basic spacefaring capabilities, but remains confined to their planetary system." Zexval's exoskeleton gleamed under the blue lighting of the command deck. The Tsundere Empire had conquered 17 star systems in the last century alone. Their superior technology and evolutionary advantages had made them the undisputed masters of this section of the galaxy. Humans would be just another footnote in their glorious expansion. "Classification?" Zexval asked, already knowing the answer. "Death World, Category 3, Nextul replied. "Harsh gravity, extreme weather patterns, and aggressive biodiversity. The inhabitants show signs of adaptability, but remain technologically inferior." Zexval's mandibles formed what passed for a smile among the Tsundere. "Deploy 3 scout ships. I want detailed information on population centers and defensive capabilities before we test our new graviton cannon." As the scout ships detached from the Dominator and accelerated toward Earth, Zexval felt the familiar thrill of conquest. The humans would never know what hit them. Deep beneath the surface of Mount Cheyenne, in a facility that didn't officially exist on any government record, Dr. Maya Sharma stared at the anomalous readings on her monitor. The Indian-American astrophysicist had been recruited to head Earth's Extraterrestrial Detection and Response Division, EDRD, 5 years ago when a passing alien vessel had accidentally broadcast a signal that Earth's telescopes had detected. "They're here," she said quietly, her dark eyes not leaving the screen. Colonel James Fletcher, the military liaison to the EDRD, looked up from his coffee. "You're certain?" 3 objects just dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter's orbit," Maya replied. "They're small, likely scout vessels, and they're using some form of cloaking technology. But our quantum detection grid caught them anyway." Fletcher nodded grimly. The existence of the quantum detection grid was perhaps humanity's best-kept secret. After the alien signal 5 years ago, governments around the world had quietly pooled resources to develop detection systems that could identify advanced technology approaching Earth. The public remained blissfully unaware of both the alien signal and the defensive measures that had been implemented. "Time to arrival?" Fletcher asked, already reaching for the secure phone. "Approximately 6 hours at their current speed," Maya answered. "And James, they're heading directly for us. Not China, not Russia, but straight for the continental United States." Fletcher's expression darkened. "They know where our population centers are. They've been watching us." "Deploy the capture teams," Maya said. "And let's keep this quiet. The last thing we need is global panic." Fletcher nodded and began making calls. Within an hour, specialized teams were positioning themselves at the projected landing sites. The Tsundere scout ship Seeker glided silently through Earth's atmosphere, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to conventional detection methods. Commander Rilzex monitored the readings of the primitive planet with growing confidence. "These humans have barely mastered nuclear fission," he remarked to his pilot. "Their electromagnetic communications are chaotic and unencrypted. This will be one of our easier conquests." The pilot nodded, guiding the ship toward a remote area in what the humans called Nevada. "Landing zone appears clear, Commander. No signs of detection or defensive measures." As the Seeker descended to just 50 meters above the desert floor, Commander Rilzex felt a momentary surge of electromagnetic energy wash over the ship. He frowned, checking his instruments. "That was odd," he muttered. "Run a diagnostic on the..." His words were cut short as every system on the scout ship simultaneously failed. The anti-gravity generators, life support, communications, all went dark. The Seeker dropped like a stone, hitting the desert floor with enough force to throw the Xindari crew against their restraints. Dazed, Commander Rilzex reached for his emergency communicator, but before he could activate it, the hatch of the scout ship was forcibly opened. Figures in strange protective suits poured in, weapons raised. The last thing Rilzex saw before a strange dart pierced his exoskeleton was the emblem on one of the human's shoulders, a stylized Earth surrounded by a shield. Similar scenes played out as the other two scout ships were neutralized with the same ruthless efficiency. Within 3 hours of entering Earth's atmosphere, all 3 Xindari scout vessels had been captured intact, their crews subdued and transported to secure facilities. Supreme Commander Zexpal paced the command deck of the Dominator, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. Still no communication from the scout ships. He demanded. Communications Officer Verline shook her head. Nothing, Supreme Commander. All 3 vessels ceased transmitting shortly after atmospheric entry. Could the planet's magnetic field be interfering with our communications? Sub-Commander Nextol suggested. Death worlds often have unusual properties. Zexval considered this. It was not uncommon for planets classified as death worlds to have strange electromagnetic fields or atmospheric conditions that could disrupt standard communications. But 3 ships simultaneously. Prepare the battle cruiser Subjugator, he ordered after a moment. If our scouts have encountered some natural phenomenon that is interfering with communications, I want to know what it is. The Subjugator has our most advanced sensors and communications equipment. Nextol hesitated. Supreme Commander, deploying a battle cruiser seems excessive for. Do you question my orders, Sub-Commander? Zextal's 4 eyes fixed on Nextol with cold intensity. No, Supreme Commander. I will prepare the Subjugator immediately. As Nextol hurried away, Zexval turned back to the view screen showing the distant Earth. Something didn't feel right, but he dismissed the thought. No primitive species had ever detected a Xindari scout ship before, let alone disabled one. It had to be some natural phenomenon. Dr. Maya Sharma stood before the captured Xindari scout ship, marveling at the sleek design and advanced materials. Behind her, teams of scientists and engineers were already carefully disassembling components for analysis. Their technology is at least a century ahead of ours, she told Colonel Fletcher, who stood beside her. Maybe more in some areas. The good news is that their computer systems use quantum principles similar to what we've theorized. Dr. Chen thinks we can access their databases within days rather than months. Fletcher nodded, his eyes on the alien crew members being kept in separate containment units. The Xindari resembled nothing so much as humanoid insects, with exoskeletons and 4 eyes set in what seemed to be a permanent expression of disdain. What about communications? He asked. Have we learned anything about their intentions or numbers? Better than that, Maya replied with a grim smile. We've accessed their navigational data. There's a larger vessel, a battle cruiser according to our translators, preparing to enter our atmosphere. And behind that, an entire fleet holding position near Jupiter. Fletcher's jaw tightened. Numbers. At least 50 warships in the main fleet, possibly more. Christ, Fletcher muttered. Recommendations. Maya's eyes gleamed with determination. We've learned that their ships are vulnerable to targeted electromagnetic pulses at specific frequencies. Their computer architecture has certain weaknesses we can exploit. I think we should prepare a warm welcome for this battle cruiser. Fletcher nodded slowly. I'll coordinate with the military assets. How quickly can we adapt what we've learned to our existing weapon systems? With what we've already discovered. Maya checked her tablet. We can have EMP weapons calibrated to their specific frequencies within 12 hours. And James, their communication systems are based on quantum entanglement. If we can disrupt that, we might be able to isolate their ships from each other. Do it, Fletcher said, already walking toward the command center. And Maya, good work. Humanity may just have a fighting chance because of you. The battlecruiser Subjugator entered Earth's atmosphere like a meteor, its thermal shields glowing orange from the friction. Despite its massive size, nearly a kilometer in length, its cloaking technology rendered it invisible to conventional detection systems. Commander Vextal stood proudly on the command deck. The Subjugator was the pride of the Tsundere fleet, equipped with weapons that could level entire cities with a single volley. "Maintain cloaking protocols," he ordered. "Scan for our scout ships and any unusual electromagnetic activity that might explain their communication failure." "Yes, Commander," his science officer replied. "Initial scans show no signs of the scout ships, but there is unusual air traffic approximately 30 kilometers ahead. Primitive aircraft in a formation." On the view screen, 5 small jets flew in what appeared to be a standard patrol pattern. To the Tsundere, these aircraft were laughably primitive, barely worthy of notice. "Ignore them," Commander Vextal said dismissively. "Continue scanning for our scout ships." As the Subjugator passed over the formation of jets, each aircraft suddenly released what appeared to be primitive missiles. The Tsundere officers on the command deck didn't even bother to raise shields. Such weapons would be harmless against their advanced hull materials. Instead of exploding on impact, however, the missiles attached themselves to the hull of the battle cruiser and emitted powerful electromagnetic pulses calibrated precisely to the frequency used by Tsundere computer systems. The effect was immediate and devastating. Systems throughout the massive ship began to fail as the carefully targeted EMPs wreaked havoc on their quantum circuitry. The cloaking device failed first, followed quickly by weapons systems and navigation controls. "What is happening?" Commander Vextal demanded as alarms blared across the command deck. "Report. Multiple system failures, Commander," the panicked science officer replied. "Some kind of electromagnetic attack specifically targeting our tech. This shouldn't be possible. Engage emergency landing protocols," Vextal ordered as the massive ship began to lose altitude, "and send an emergency transmission to the Dominator." But it was too late. The Subjugator crashed into the Movav Desert with enough force to register as a small earthquake on seismographs across the southwestern United States. Within minutes, black helicopters appeared on the horizon, carrying teams equipped with weapons and technology derived from the captured scout ships. As human soldiers moved efficiently through the crashed battle cruiser, neutralizing the dazed Tsundere crew with their own stunning technology, Commander Vextal could only stare in disbelief. "How?" he managed to ask as a human soldier approached him. "You are primitives." The soldier, a woman with captain's bars on her uniform, smiled grimly. "Surprise." On the Dominator, Supreme Commander Zexval received the fragmentary distress call from the Subjugator moments before it went silent. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among the Tsundere. "Impossible," he whispered, then turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleet for full combat deployment. We are not dealing with primitives. We are dealing with a threat that must be eliminated." As the Tsundere fleet began to move toward Earth, Zexval had no way of knowing that on the planet below, Dr. Maya Sharma and her team were already analyzing the battle cruiser's more advanced systems, learning even more about Tsundere weaknesses and preparing Earth's defenses for the coming conflict. "The real battle," Maya told Colonel Fletcher as they watched the Tsundere fleet reorganizing on long-range sensors, "is just beginning. But now we know what we're fighting, and they still don't understand what they're dealing with." Fletcher nodded grimly. "And that's our advantage." The counterattack. Supreme Commander Zexval stood before the holographic display showing his assembled fleet. 47 warships arranged in the traditional Tsundere attack formation. The loss of the battle cruiser Subjugator had been troubling, but he remained confident in the overwhelming force at his disposal. "The humans have proven more resourceful than expected," he announced to his assembled commanders, his mandibles clicking with controlled fury. but their primitive technology cannot stand against the full might of the Sindari Empire. We will descend upon their world with such overwhelming force that resistance will be futile. Sub-Commander Nextal approached cautiously. Supreme Commander, our analysis suggests the humans somehow used our own technology against the subjugator. Perhaps we should reconsider our classification of this species. Zexval's 4 eyes narrowed. The loss of the subjugator was due to an unexpected natural phenomenon, or simple luck. No primitive species could understand our quantum systems quickly enough to exploit them. But Supreme Commander, enough. Zexval's exoskeleton flared with color, a sign of extreme irritation. Begin the attack sequence. The main fleet will approach in 3 waves as per standard invasion protocol. I want their major population centers targeted first. As the Sindari fleet began to move toward Earth, Zexval felt a flicker of unease. In 600 years of conquest, no species had ever captured a Sindari vessel intact, let alone disabled a battle cruiser. These humans would pay dearly for their defiance. In a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon, world leaders gathered via encrypted holographic links. The existence of the alien threat had finally been shared with the highest levels of government, though the general public remained unaware. How bad is it? The President of the United States asked, her face grim as she studied the tactical display showing the approaching Sindari fleet. Dr. Maya Sharma stepped forward. 47 warships, Madam President. Based on the data we've extracted from their systems, each one is capable of devastating a major city. Their weapons include graviton cannons that can trigger earthquakes, atmospheric disruptors, and energy weapons beyond anything we've developed. Then we have no chance, the Russian president said bluntly. I didn't say that, Maya replied with a tight smile. We've learned a great deal about their weaknesses. She nodded to Colonel Fletcher, who activated a different holographic display showing Sindari warship's schematics. The Sindari have conquered 17 worlds using the same tactical approach, Fletcher explained. They identify planets they classify as death worlds, places with harsh conditions but valuable resources. They consider Earth a Category 3 death world, which basically means they see our environment as dangerous, but our species as primitive. Their psychology is interesting, Maya continued. The Sindari evolved from hive-dwelling insectoids. While they're now individual entities, they retain a form of quantum neural entanglement, a low-level psychic connection that helps them coordinate during battle. Their right flank is consistently weaker in battle formations because their dominant sensory organs are on their left side. More importantly, Fletcher added, their ships have critical vulnerabilities in their engine cooling systems, and their combat doctrine relies heavily on their neural link for coordination. We've developed a disruption system that can sever this link temporarily, causing confusion in their ranks. The Chinese premier leaned forward. And our defensive capabilities. Maya brought up another display showing Earth's orbital defense grid, a network of satellites that had been rapidly modified with Sindari technology. We've converted our satellite network to emit the disruption frequency that affects their neural link. Additionally, we've equipped our fighter jets and missile systems with EMP weapons calibrated to their technology. It won't stop all of them, but it will level the playing field significantly. What about civilian casualties? The British Prime Minister asked. We've quietly evacuated key areas under the guise of emergency preparedness drills, Fletcher replied, but we need to maintain public calm. If we announced the existence of a hostile alien fleet, the panic would be catastrophic. The President of the United States stood. Begin the defense operations, and may God help us all. As the first wave of Sindari warships entered Earth's orbit, they encountered no resistance. Supreme Commander Zexval watched with satisfaction as 10 ships deployed into attack formation. Commence initial bombardment, he ordered. Target their military installations first. On Earth, Dr. Maya Sharma stood in the EDRD control center, watching the tactical display. They're moving exactly as predicted, she said to Fletcher. Activate the disruption field. Fletcher nodded to a technician, who pressed a series of commands into a console. Around the world, modified satellites simultaneously emitted a carefully calibrated quantum frequency designed to disrupt the Tsundere neural link. In orbit, chaos erupted aboard the Tsundere ships. Officers who had been connected by the subtle psychic bond for their entire lives suddenly found themselves isolated within their own minds. The sensation was disorienting, even terrifying. "What is happening?" a ship commander demanded as his crew stumbled and clutched at their heads. "The neural link is gone," his science officer replied in panic. "I can't sense the other ships." On the Dominator, Zexval felt the isolation like a physical wound. For the first time in his life, the constant background presence of other Tsundere minds had vanished, leaving only a terrifying void. "Status report," he managed to shout, fighting through the disorientation. Communications disrupted across the fleet. Nextol reported, visibly struggling to maintain composure. "Ships are breaking formation. Some are firing weapons without authorization." On the tactical display, Zexval watched in horror as his carefully orchestrated attack dissolved into confusion. Ships drifted out of position, some firing randomly into space, others colliding with each other as their pilots lost coordination. "Launch fighters," Maya ordered back on Earth. "Focus on their right flanks, just as we planned." Squadrons of fighter jets rose from bases around the world, armed with missiles containing the modified EMP technology. Unlike conventional air-to-air combat, these pilots had been trained specifically for this moment, focusing on the weak points in Tsundere ship design that had been identified from the captured vessels. The fighters approached the disorganized Tsundere ships from their right sides, launching their specialized EMP missiles with precision. Ship after ship lost power as the electromagnetic pulses disrupted their quantum circuitry. "We're losing the first wave," Nextol reported, his mandibles trembling. 7 ships disabled, 3 retreating. Zexval's exoskeleton darkened with rage. "Deploy the second wave. Focus all scanners on identifying the source of this disruption." The second wave of 15 ships accelerated toward Earth, weapons charged. This time, they encountered Earth's missile defense systems, now reprogrammed to target the specific weaknesses in Tsundere shield technology. On the tactical display in the Pentagon bunker, Maya and Fletcher watched as the battle unfolded. "Their second wave is adjusting tactics," Fletcher noted. "They're trying to compensate for the neural disruption." Maya nodded. "They're adaptive. Time for Phase 2. She activated a communication link to a facility in Antarctica, where scientists had been working with the captured Tsundere communication systems. "Commence Operation Echo," she ordered. In orbit, the Tsundere fleet suddenly received dozens of contradictory orders, all transmitted using their own encrypted communication protocols. Some ships received commands to retreat, others to attack specific locations, and still others to fire on fellow Tsundere vessels. "We're receiving orders directly from Imperial Command," reported a confused communications officer on one of the second-wave ships. "We're instructed to target the Conqueror." "That can't be right," the ship's commander replied. "The Conqueror is part of our own fleet." Similar confusion spread throughout the Tsundere formation as ships began to follow conflicting orders, some turning their weapons on each other. On the Dominator, Zexval watched in disbelief as his mighty invasion force tore itself apart. "They're using our own communications against us," Nextol said in horror. "How is this possible? How could primitives understand our quantum encryption so quickly?" For the first time in his long career of conquest, Zexval felt something approaching fear. "Launch the third wave," he ordered, his voice less certain than before. "All ships, disengage quantum communications and revert to basic light-speed transmissions only." As the final 22 ships of the Tsundere fleet moved toward Earth, Earth's defense forces were ready. From hidden bases around the world, 5 spacecraft rose into the atmosphere, vessels that had been hastily constructed using a blend of human engineering and adapted Tsundere technology. "This is Admiral Helena Chen of the Earth Defense Force," announced the commander of the lead ship, the Defiance. All units, engage as planned. The Earth ships were smaller than their Xindari counterparts, but more maneuverable, and their crews had been specifically trained to exploit the weaknesses in Xindari tactics. They approached from the right flank, targeting engine cooling systems with precision strikes. In the Pentagon bunker, Maya watched the battle with tense anticipation. "The neural disruption is still holding," she reported. "Their ships are operating as individuals rather than a coordinated force." Fletcher nodded grimly. "And an individual Xindari ship is no match for our adapted vessels." The battle in Earth's orbit lasted less than an hour. When it ended, 17 Xindari ships had been disabled, 11 had been destroyed, and the remaining 19, including the Dominator, were in full retreat. Supreme Commander Zexpal stood before the Imperial Council, his once gleaming exoskeleton now dull with disgrace. The holographic faces of the council members showed contempt and disappointment. "You lost half our invasion fleet to primitives," the council elder said, mandibles clicking with disapproval. "Explain yourself." "They are not primitives," Zexpal replied, his voice hollow. "They understand our technology, our tactics, our psychology. Somehow, they learned more about us in days than we learned about them in years of observation." "Impossible," another council member scoffed. "No species has ever captured our ships before." "Nevertheless, it happened," Zexpal insisted. "The humans specifically targeted our neural link. They used our own communication systems against us. They knew exactly where to strike our vessels." The council elder's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" "That we have severely underestimated this species. Earth is not just another death world. The humans are not just another primitive species. They are adaptive, resourceful, and dangerous beyond anything we have encountered before." After a moment of silence, the council elder spoke again. "We will send Ambassador Krell to assess the situation. Perhaps diplomacy will succeed where force failed." Zextal's mandibles twitched in what passed for a bitter smile among the Xindari. "I fear it is too late for that." 3 months after the failed invasion, a single Xindari diplomatic vessel approached Earth under a flag of truce. Rather than the expected atmosphere of defeat, Ambassador Krell found himself escorted to the United Nations in Geneva, where Earth's leaders awaited. Dr. Maya Sharma sat beside Colonel Fletcher in the Grand Assembly Hall as Ambassador Krell was introduced. The Xindari diplomat moved with dignity despite the circumstances, his ornate exoskeleton gleaming under the lights. "People of Earth," Krell began, speaking through a translator device, "the Xindari Empire extends its hand in peaceful greeting. We regret the unfortunate misunderstanding that led to conflict between our peoples." Maya leaned close to Fletcher and whispered, "Notice how he calls it a misunderstanding rather than an invasion attempt." Fletcher nodded slightly. Standard diplomatic approach. Rewrite history to save face. Ambassador Krell continued his speech, offering technology, knowledge, and protection in exchange for mutual cooperation. To most of the assembled world leaders, it might have seemed like a generous offer from a technologically superior civilization. But thanks to the captured Xindari databases, Earth's defenders knew better. The mining rights Krell requested would give the Xindari access to critical resources and strategic locations. The cultural exchange would provide them intelligence on human society. The protection would effectively make Earth a vassal world. When Krell finished his presentation, he looked expectantly at the assembly, clearly anticipating gratitude for his generous offer. Instead, the Secretary General of the United Nations stood and activated a holographic display. It showed the locations of 17 worlds conquered by the Xindari Empire, complete with details of how each conquest had proceeded. "Ambassador Krell," the Secretary General said calmly, "we appreciate your offer. However, we are already familiar with the Xindari approach to cultural exchange as implemented on Proxima Centauri b, Ta Ceti E, and 15 other worlds." Krell's 4 eyes widened in shock. "How could you possibly?" "We've studied your databases extensively. Maya said, stepping forward. "We know about your conquest strategies, your weapons development programs, and your classification of Earth as a resource extraction target." Krell's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "This is an outrage. You have violated." "No, Ambassador," Fletcher interrupted, his voice hard. "An unprovoked invasion of our world was the violation. We merely defended ourselves." The Secretary General raised a hand for silence. "Ambassador Krell, Earth is prepared to establish peaceful relations with the Xindari Empire, but on equal terms. We will not accept status as a subject world or resource colony." "Furthermore," Maya added, "we have already made contact with representatives from 3 of your subject worlds. They are quite interested in discussing alternatives to Xindari oversight." Krell's exoskeleton paled to an ashen gray. "You wouldn't dare." "The Empire would." "The Empire," Fletcher cut in, "has discovered that its technology is not as superior as it believed. Its tactics are not as effective as it thought. And Earth is not as primitive as it assumed." The Secretary General nodded gravely. "We offer the Xindari Empire a choice. Recognize Earth and its allies as sovereign entities with all diplomatic rights and privileges, or face a coalition that grows more technologically capable each day." Ambassador Krell stared at the human delegation in disbelief. In just 3 months, these primitives had not only defeated a Xindari invasion force, but had begun forming alliances with other conquered worlds. It was unprecedented in the 6,000-year history of the Empire. "I will convey your message to the Imperial Council," Krell finally managed, his voice subdued. 6 months later, Dr. Maya Sharma stood on the observation deck of the newly completed Earth Orbital Station Unity. Beside her, Colonel, now General, Fletcher watched as a diplomatic vessel from Proxima Centauri b docked alongside ships from 3 other formerly subjugated worlds. "The Galactic Cooperative Alliance," Maya said with satisfaction. "Not bad for a bunch of primitives from a death world." Fletcher smiled slightly. "The Xindari still haven't recovered from the shock. Their entire worldview was based on their technological superiority." "That's the thing about humans," Maya replied, watching as representatives from different species began to disembark from their vessels. "We don't need to be the strongest or the most advanced. We just need to be adaptable. And willing to work together," Fletcher added. "The Xindari never expected us to form alliances with their other subjects so quickly." Maya nodded, her eyes on the stars beyond the viewports. "They called Earth a death world because of our harsh environment. They never understood that it was precisely those challenges that made humans so dangerous. We've been adapting and overcoming since the beginning of our existence." On the main diplomatic deck below, the Secretary General welcomed representatives from worlds across the sector, including, notably, a subdued Xindari delegation led by a new ambassador. "The question now," Fletcher said quietly, "is what happens next. We've proven ourselves on the galactic stage, but there are still empires out there more powerful than the Xindari." Maya's expression grew thoughtful. "Then we'll keep doing what humans do best. Learn, adapt, and work together. The universe is vast, General Fletcher, but I think humanity just might be up to the challenge." As she spoke, more ships appeared in the distance, vessels from worlds even further away, attracted by the news that someone had finally stood up to the Xindari Empire and won. Earth, once classified as just another death world populated by primitives, was rapidly becoming the center of a new interstellar alliance. The Xindari had come expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant and introduced it to the galactic community. As Maya watched the delegates gathering below, she couldn't help but smile at the irony. "You know," she said to Fletcher, "for a primitive species from a death world, I'd say we're doing pretty well." Fletcher chuckled. "I'd say the universe doesn't know what hit it yet." In the vast darkness of space, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter on the blue planet that had defied an empire and changed the course of galactic history.